In the early 17th century, a group of devout Christians in England sought religious freedom. They were known as the Pilgrims, a determined and faithful group who longed for a place where they could worship without fear. These were the Pilgrims, and they faced persecution for their beliefs. Their desire to practice their faith freely was met with hostility and oppression from the authorities and their fellow townsfolk. King James I demanded conformity to the Church of England. He believed that religious unity was essential for the stability of his kingdom and saw any deviation as a threat to his rule. The Pilgrims, however, wanted to separate from the established church and worship in their own way. They held secret meetings, risking their lives to practice their faith as they believed was right. This difference in religious views led to discrimination and hardship. They were often mistreated by their neighbors and faced constant threats to their safety and well-being. They dreamed of a new life where they could practice their faith freely, without fear of persecution. Their prayers were filled with hope and a longing for a place where they could live in peace. Driven by their faith and the hope for a better future, the Pilgrims made the momentous decision to leave England. They knew the journey would be fraught with danger, but their desire for religious freedom gave them the courage to proceed. They embarked on a perilous journey across the Atlantic Ocean, seeking refuge in the New World. The voyage was long and arduous, with rough seas and harsh conditions testing their resolve. These were no ordinary travelers. They were families, men, women, and children, willing to risk everything for their beliefs. They left behind their homes, their friends, and their familiar lives, all for the promise of a land where they could worship freely. Their courage and determination would shape the course of history. The Pilgrim's journey was not just a physical voyage, but a testament to their unwavering faith and resilience. The Pilgrims were not alone in their pursuit of religious freedom. They were part of a larger movement of people across Europe who sought to escape religious persecution and find a place where they could live according to their beliefs. Across Europe, others faced similar persecution. Many were forced to flee their homes, leaving behind everything they knew in search of a new beginning. The Protestant Reformation had ignited religious fervor and dissent, challenging the authority of the Catholic Church. This period of religious upheaval led to widespread conflict and the desire for reform and freedom. This period of upheaval and change drove many to seek new beginnings in distant lands. The promise of religious freedom and the opportunity to build a new life drew countless settlers to the New World. The Pilgrim story is just one chapter in the larger narrative of religious persecution and the quest for freedom that shaped the early modern world. Their journey and the journeys of many others like them laid the foundation for the diverse and pluralistic societies we know today. In September 1620, 102 passengers, known to history as the Pilgrims, boarded a small, cramped ship called the Mayflower. They left Plymouth, England, with hearts full of hope and trepidation. The vast Atlantic stretched before them, promising both opportunity and peril. The journey was fraught with danger. The Mayflower was a merchant vessel, not designed for passenger travel, let alone a transatlantic voyage with so many souls aboard. The conditions were cramped and unsanitary, the food meager and often spoiled. Seasickness was rampant and storms battered the little ship relentlessly. Weeks turned into months as they sailed westward, the vastness of the ocean a constant reminder of their isolation. Despite the hardships, the Pilgrims persevered, their faith a source of strength and comfort. They held prayer meetings, sang hymns, and drew strength from their shared purpose. They believed that God would see them through this perilous journey and guide them to a new land where they could build a better life. Their resilience and unwavering belief in their mission sustained them through the darkest hours. After 66 long and arduous days at sea, the weary travelers finally sighted land. The journey had been grueling, with rough seas and limited provisions testing their endurance and resolve. Many had fallen ill, and the cramped conditions on the Mayflower had taken a toll on their spirits. On November 11th, 1620, the Mayflower dropped anchor off the coast of Cape Cod in present-day Massachusetts. This sight brought a mix of relief and anxiety to the Pilgrims. They had survived the perilous journey across the Atlantic, but now faced the unknown challenges of a new land. Their joy was tempered by the realization that they had arrived far north of their intended destination, the Virginia colony. This unexpected turn of events meant they were outside the jurisdiction of the Virginia Company's charter, leaving them without legal authority to establish a settlement. Winter was fast approaching, and the Pilgrims found themselves in a strange and unforgiving land. The New England coast was stark and barren, a far cry from the fertile lands they had hoped to find. The cold winds and early snowfalls signaled the harsh winter that lay ahead. They were ill-prepared for the harsh New England winter that lay ahead. With limited supplies and no established shelter, the Pilgrims faced a daunting struggle for survival. They had to quickly build makeshift shelters and find ways to secure food and warmth. Before disembarking, the Pilgrim leaders recognized the need for order and governance in this new land. Without a clear legal framework, they risked chaos and disunity. It was essential to establish a system of self-governance to ensure cooperation and mutual support among the settlers. They gathered in the cramped confines of the Mayflower's cabin and drafted a document that would become a cornerstone of American democracy, the Mayflower Compact. This compact was a pioneering effort to create a government based on the consent of the governed, a radical idea at the time. The Mayflower Compact was a solemn agreement signed by 41 male passengers that established a civil government based on the consent of the governed. It outlined the principles of self-governance and mutual responsibility, setting a precedent for future democratic practices in America. It was a radical departure from the monarchical rule they had left behind in England. The Pilgrims sought to create a society where decisions were made collectively and leaders were chosen by the people. This was a significant step towards the development of democratic governance in the New World. This document, signed in the cramped cabin of a small ship, laid the foundation for self-government and the rule of law in the Plymouth colony. It was a bold experiment in democracy, reflecting the Pilgrims' desire for a just and equitable society. It stands as a testament to the Pilgrims' belief in the power of community and their commitment to creating a just and equitable society. The Mayflower Compact not only helped them survive the immediate challenges, but also set the stage for the development of democratic institutions in America. Their legacy of self-governance and community spirit continues to inspire to this day. The Pilgrims had hoped to find a hospitable land, but their new home proved to be a harsh and unforgiving wilderness. Winter descended upon them with a fury they had never known. The cold was relentless. The wind howled fiercely, and snow piled up in thick drifts. The Pilgrims, already weakened by their long voyage, suffered terribly. Their flimsy shelters offered little protection from the elements. Food was scarce, and disease spread rapidly through their ranks. Many succumbed to scurvy, pneumonia, and other illnesses. By the time spring finally arrived, only half of the original Mayflower passengers had survived. The winter of 1620 to 1621 would forever be etched in their memory as a time of unimaginable hardship and loss. The Pilgrims' faith was tested as they buried their dead in unmarked graves on the desolate shore. They had risked everything for the chance to build a new life in this new world, and now, it seemed, their dreams were slipping away. Yet even in the face of such adversity, their spirit remained unbroken. They drew strength from their faith, their community, and the faint glimmer of hope that spring would bring. As winter finally loosened its icy grip, the Pilgrims were astonished to encounter a Native American man who greeted them in English. This unexpected encounter was both surprising and comforting for the weary settlers, who had endured months of hardship and uncertainty in a new and unforgiving land. His name was Samoset, and he belonged to the Abenaki tribe. Samoset had learned some English from fishermen and traders who frequented the coast, and his ability to communicate with the Pilgrims was a crucial bridge between two vastly different worlds. Samoset's presence was a sign, a beacon of hope in a time of despair. For the Pilgrims, who had lost many of their number to the harsh winter and were struggling to survive, Samoset's arrival was a glimmer of light in the darkness. He told them of another man, Squanto, a member of the Patuxet tribe, who had been captured by English traders years earlier and had learned to speak English fluently. Squanto's story was one of resilience and adaptation, having survived enslavement and found his way back to his homeland. Squanto became an invaluable intermediary between the Pilgrims and the local Wampanoag tribe, who had been observing the newcomers with a mixture of curiosity and caution. His knowledge of both cultures allowed him to facilitate communication and understanding, easing tensions and fostering cooperation. The Wampanoag, led by their sachem Massasoit, had their own reasons to be wary of these strange, pale-faced people. They had seen the arrival of Europeans bring both opportunity and devastation, and they approached the Pilgrims with a blend of hope and skepticism. They had witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of European diseases that had ravaged their populations. Smallpox and other illnesses had decimated entire villages, leaving the Wampanoag weakened and vulnerable. Despite their reservations, Massasoit saw an opportunity for an alliance with the Pilgrims. He recognized that the newcomers possessed valuable resources and knowledge that could benefit his people. The Wampanoag had been weakened by conflicts with neighboring tribes, and they were still reeling from a devastating plague that had swept through their villages a few years earlier. This plague had left a significant portion of their population dead, and their ability to defend themselves and maintain their way of life was severely compromised. An alliance with the Pilgrims, who possessed firearms and knowledge of European farming techniques, could help them rebuild their strength and security. The Pilgrims, in turn, could benefit from the Wampanoag's deep understanding of the land and its resources, learning how to cultivate crops and hunt local game. In March 1621, Massasoit and his warriors met with the Pilgrims and negotiated a treaty of peace and mutual assistance. This treaty laid the foundation for a relationship that would be tested by time and circumstance, but in that moment it represented a hopeful step towards coexistence and mutual benefit.